ask you the questions from the users, if that's okay.
Okay. Okay, 100%. So I can start now, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, as a farmer, we know that we are, as we say, price takers. You know, we don't make the price; the market makes the price for us. So we actually receive the price, but the only thing that we can control is our cost structure. So obviously, we're going to look. I'm going to, broadly speaking, talk about the cost structure of establishing an avocado orchard, you know, and then look into the running costs of it and try to get to a benchmarking process where we can then say, you know, this is how many avos you must produce and at what price must you produce it to be able to make a living, you know, and to be able to at least do something that's worthwhile with it. As we know that, you know, if you're in the avocado business, you compete with all the farmers in the world that are into the avocado business because mostly it's about export. And export, you compete with farmers from Peru and Australia and everywhere else. So you've got to be competitive. Which, of course, poses the question of what must you do and how you go to determine whether you will be competitive if you're a startup, but you're starting up with this business. So let's firstly just say this. Avocado farming, you know, this whole thing of orchards and trees. It's a capital-intensive business. It's very expensive to start off, and I'll elaborate about that a little bit. It's technologically intensive because you have to be up to date with new technology and everything that goes into this, you know. And it's management intensive because it's also a business that needs a lot of management, in the sense that you've got to employ lots of people because it's kind of mechanized up to a point, but at the end of the day, you are also an employer of many people if you're in the avocado business. So if we look at it and we say, okay, where do we start? What are we talking about in this business? We're going to talk, broadly speaking, if you look at all the functions that have to be covered in an avocado farming business, you're going to look at, of course, marketing practices, you know. You're going to look at irrigation practices. You're going to look at fertilizer practices. You'll have to look at pest control and diseases, pruning practices, packing strategies, labor management, and of course, record keeping. So an intensive farming, we can actually call it precision farming systems. You know, record keeping is a very, very important part of it. And whether you're going to computerize it or whether you're going to do it by hand, you have to have a record keeping system that is going to tell you whether a certain tree is economically viable or not. In other words, it's like very much like if you farm cattle, you know, and you've got a cow, you're going to have a record of what that cow produces. Now you're going to have a record of what a tree produces to be able to know whether you're going to make it. And then over and above that, and I'll get to how many trees and where a break-even point is the way that we see it at the moment. How many avos must you produce to get to a break-even point, taking in consideration the production costs in Zambia. But just broadly speaking, I would say that now to establish a hectare of avocados trees, and if you're going to use a 7 meters by 428 square meters per tree, you're going to have 350 trees per hectare. And to get that established with the irrigation system that must be in there, to be able to make it work, you are looking, before you produce or before you start selling, you're going to be in the red by approximately 100,000 kwacha per hectare. So it's capital intensive, it's expensive to start with. Now you can ask yourself, how is it possible? It's not only trees, it's the ground, it's the soil, it's the irrigation systems, and the tree will start producing if you're very good at it. In the second year, maybe a few avos, in the third year, a bit more. And then in the fourth and fifth year, you're getting up to production of avocados. And then you've got to get to a stage where you're going to say, okay, how many avocados are we going to need to be able to cover all these different costs of chemicals and fertilizers and labor and marketing costs and freight and all these things that you need to get your avos to the market, to get your avos to where the consumer were going to buy it, and that the return from there is the worthwhile for you to be able to make something for yourself out of it. So, like all things, it's as we go along, we learn, but you have to calculate a break-even point. Now, we did that at BUTTERMERE Farms to say, where will we be at with this history of when we started off, the mistakes we made, the different tribe varieties, the different type of trees, the rootstock, all the technical side of the farming business, of pest control. We made a few mistakes last year, we some of the avos we couldn't market. And how are you going to get yourself in the top 10 or 20% of avo producers to be able to compete on the international market, as well as having a good return on the investment you made? Now, just to give you an idea, before I go into the technical side of it a bit more, is to say that our calculation says that we will have to produce around about 9 tons of avos per hectare to break even. Now, if I work that backwards and I say, okay, how does that actually work? That means if you've got a 200-gram avocado, you've got to produce in a region of 45,000 avocados per hectare. And if you bring that back to a tree, it's around about 128 avocados per tree. So that's why I said, the record-keeping system is a per tree business, because you will find that certain trees and diseases and everything else, you got to lose some trees, like mortality rates and all things because of phytophthora or so on. It could be 5%, it could be more. So it's a per tree business, and that we have to look at what the production is going to be and so on. Then over and above that, you also have to realize that all the avocados you produce is not going to be exported, because some of them are going to be too small. Some of them will have a bit of blight on it, or sunburn on it, or some marks on it, and the market doesn't want it. And then that is where we decided, because if you're really good, if you're at top of your game with this avocado business, you may get between 75 and 80% of your crop that you can export. In other words, then you're very good at it. And then you've got 25% of avocados that is not good for export. That's why we thought, okay, we would better put up a factory that we can produce avocado oil out of those. It's like, so we can compete with olive oil and all the other oils in the market, to be able to use it and not have to throw away the product. So the thing is that we, in Zambia and South Africa, the market is far more mature. You've got lots of avocado farmers, and you've got lots of different factories and pack houses and oil producers and so on. And in Zambia, we are only, we're just starting off. I believe we'll be the first farm with the oil press and to make oil by this crop this year. So the equipment is coming and so on. So we import some equipment to be able to do this, because we have to use all the avocados that we can produce. So just broadly speaking, this is what we're looking at. In other words, 9 tons a hectare, that's what we say with our capital outlay. with irrigation and everything, the running costs, and we can talk about the running costs and so on, whether you're going to, the choices you have to make from an economical point of view, whether you, for argument's sake, are going to use contractors or whether you are going to do everything yourself, where you're going to do your own marketing or you're going to use, in other words, internalized marketing, you're going to do it all yourself, or you're going to get hold of a wholesaler, and people who are experts at exports to be able to do that for you. In other words, the marketing skills, we farmers are not really good at marketing at times, and you need to employ people who can, or people who take your product off and see that it gets to the market, whether your market is now in Europe, or whether it's in the Emirates, or whether it's in Canada, or wherever you want to send it to. In other words, the whole issue of market research and where you can sell these products are very important. And then water use and the monitoring methods of how much water must you use, because it's a critical thing. You over irrigate, you're going to get a hiding. You under irrigate, you're not going to get the production. So it's a question of how are you going to measure these things, and there's the technology coming into it. And you can use tensiometers and EnviroScan and all kinds of things to see what's going on to the soil and whether the avocado tree is getting enough water or not. Because if it's not a happy avocado tree, it's not going to produce avos, not enough in any case. So you've got to keep the tree happy. Soils, if we look at the soils and we look at, okay, what kind of soils do we have? Now you've got, soil vary from farm to farm, and even on a farm, and even in your orchard, it could vary from types and capacity and potential, etc. So you've got to be a precision farmer in the sense that you've got to use fertilizer to get the utmost return on the costing of that. And it's important to understand that everything comes out of the soil. So you've got to, how can I say, look after the soil, because the tree will use whatever is in the soil to produce. And if we don't do that correctly, it's like building a house. If you don't have the foundation done correctly, you're in for trouble. You're going to have a cracked house. And then, all the little nitty-gritty things like whether you're going to use mulch, or whether you're going to, how are you going to do your pruning? How are you going to do it by hand? Or are you going to mechanize it, How are you going to use your record keeping computerized or not? So at the end of the day, there's a lot of decisions to have to be made, and we have to be able to focus on all these and really get into it, to the detail of it, and to compare and develop a benchmarking process for ourselves in our avo orchards in Zambia. Because you can imagine that freight in Zambia is far more expensive, or because we're a landlocked country and we don't have a harbor, so we're either going to send these export avos to Dar es Salaam, or we're going to send it to Cape Town or Durban to get it out, and maybe one day we get a passage through to Mozambique to be able to export from there, which is the shortest route, I suppose. But the long of it is that freight is becoming more and more expensive every day, as we know, with fuel prices and everything else, and transport and so on. So, and then to get them on the ship and the cold chain, and to keep those avos in a state of not ripening till they get to the market, and then there's ripening costs and everything else involved in it. So, if we look at it, what is the range of what can happen, and with the establishment of avocado orchard? And I think if you start off with the soil, you look firstly at the climate where you're at, the rainfall, the fluctuation in temperatures. You don't want under 5 degrees in winter. You don't want it too hot. You don't want too much wind. You don't want this, that, and the next thing. But as we know, the climate and weather is very unpredictable. But there are averages we can look at and so on. So if you say, what does this cost? 90% of your costing is going to go into employment costs. marketing and ripening costs, freight, chemicals and fertilizers, repairs, maintenance and replacements, as well as all kinds of rates and levies that you have to pay to get these things into the market. You'll have to find a benchmark for how many people you're going to employ. And, this is all not so easy, because there's a difference in employing how many people you employ if everybody is trained and everybody knows what they're doing. But as we know, we're only starting off now. It's not to say that we've got lots of people that actually know how to farm avocados. It's a learning curve. We'll all have to learn, and in a learning curve, usually there's school fees to be paid, and we go to pay those school fees to get up to where we must be. So, but to get to a benchmark, you're going to need, I think, at least one full-time employee for every 4 hectares that you have of avocados. The marketing costs and everything according to that, if you can get, in other words, your management of your pest control and disease control is at such a level that you can have round about 80% of your crop to be able to be exported. But as we know, the ideal never happens. The fact of the matter is it will take you a few years to be experienced enough to get there. So most probably we're going to be around about 60, 65%. And then we're going to have anything between 40 and 35% of avos that we'll have to crush to make oil out of. And that's, again, a different market, because now you've got oil in little bottles, and you've got to get a label, and you've got to get a brand, and you've got to get all these things, and the market must be introduced. So there's negotiations with everybody that actually sells to the public. And as we all know, that is not the easiest thing to do. But if you don't start, you're not going to get there. So we've started, and we believe that we can make it work. So in a nutshell, then, before I give you an opportunity for questions and so on, is that whether you pack yourself, in other words, you put out a packing shed and everything. Now we've erected one, is just about finished, but it's about 96 meters long and 25 meters wide. It's as big as a soccer field, just about, to fit all the packing equipment and factory and oil making equipment and so on, to be able to get the products into the market at a very quick time when the market window gives us an opportunity to earn a premium. Now we know, for instance, that if you go a bit too late, everybody else is in the market with you, and the price of avocados will drop, and the public will not be able, you will not able to negotiate a premium price. At the moment, it looks like we will have about a 3-4 week market window where we will be in front of the South African avocado producer because of our climate up there in Zambia, and that we will be in the market before they get there. We hope that our research, our desk research, that it will be so, will actually work out in practice. But so far, it looks like that's going to be the case. And as soon as, if that's the case, you're going to earn a premium for your avocados in the overseas export market. So it's important that we try to exploit that opportunity if it's really there. Then we must expect, that about 5% of our trees we're going to lose them. They're going to get some kind of disease and die off, and you'll have to replant and everything else. So you've got mortalities, like in all farming businesses. A tree is a living thing, and some of them are going to die off when they shouldn't, and some of them are going to last forever, just about, and some of them are going to be good producers, and some of them are not going to be, and that's why you have to know how many you must get. Sometimes you will actually take it out because it's costing of water and fertilizer and everything, and it's not bringing anything back or not enough. And that's why your record keeping has to be at a high level, because if we only work on averages, you don't know where you're at. New farming method says you've got to be a precision farmer. You've got to know precisely where it is, because you can have an avocado tree that produces, argument's sake, 300 avocados, and the next tree next to it will produce 100 avocados, and the next one 150. And if you fertilize them all the same, the tree that's actually producing the most avocados are not going to get enough nutrients, and the tree that's not producing enough is going to get too much. And the result is that you're going to pull down the high producer to try to push up the bad producer. Talking about the tree now, the fact of the matter is precision farming and very expert record keeping will be very necessary. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's just in short, I think, just to give you an overview of how we approach this. I think we can, if necessary, we can, in future discussions, we must look at, okay, what is the establishment costs in Zambia now? You know, not when I started putting them in. What is the trend and which direction is it going to go? You know, where do we find the right avocado plant, you know, the right rootstock for Zambian conditions? Because at the moment we're flying blind on that. We use the Zambian avocado trees, you know, how can I say, the indigenous avocado trees rootstock, because we felt that those avocado trees would be the most resistant for diseases in you know, or root diseases or that may be present in Zambia. But then we also use some other rootstock to see what the difference is going to be. We've got different varieties in our orchard because some of them are, you know, the smaller Hass types, and then we've got Pinkerton, which is the more green skin, smooth skin type, you know, and these are all have different markets. So the more different varieties you plant, the more different markets you have to source for yourself to be able to sell all these avocados at a profitable price. So at the end of the day, my calculation says we've got to produce an avocado to break even for 1 kwacha. And 9 tons, 1 kwacha. So you're going to have a revenue of 45,000 kwacha per hectare just to break even. Then you haven't made a profit yet. So that's where the 9 tons come from. We looked at our costing and said, you know, this is what the fertilizer is costing us, and et cetera, you know, especially we flying a bit blind on, you know, the equipment and so on. If I give you an idea, putting up a pack shed with the packing equipment and the factory is going to cost us on the wrong side of 20 million kwacha. So it's an expensive exercise. It's capital intensive, and we believe we got it right. So sometimes you have to take a chance on what your gut tells you, and what your research tells you, and what your mind tells you to be able to do. But then, I think in Zambia especially, we will also have to look at the opportunities for outgrowers. Everybody can't start off with a capital intensive business like that, and I think there should be opportunities for people to tie in with commercial farmers, small farmers who want to tie and say who wants a hectare or 2 of avocados. So, you know, you're not, if you have that, you don't have the opportunity to put up a pack shed. You need somebody else to do it for you. There's costing in that involved and so on. You can't do a lot of market research because you can't even fill a few containers to get it overseas. So there's the domestic market, which is quite limited. We have our own difficulties in Zambia that the South Africans can market over there, but we can't necessarily put our avocados in the South African market because everybody is trying to protect their own market, you know. Now, those are the things that we'll have to negotiate with our government in Zambia to say, you know, we need market access to be able to sell our product. And if we don't do these things correctly, the entrance or for new farmers to enter the business avocado is going to be very prohibitive, because in the end of the day, as I said when I started off, is that the market, the consumer will determine what you get for your avocado, and the whole value chain and costing of that value chain to get the avocado to the consumer is very relevant. and we will have to look into that side of it to get it as economical as possible, seeing that we can't do a lot about the freight issues because freight is expensive. As fuel prices are, it looks, for me, it feels like freight is just becoming more expensive every day and more expensive as we go along. And there's nothing to be done about it except see that there's enough competition so we don't get taken to the cleaners every time. Now, Linda, that's in short. I don't know if you would like me to talk about something else specifically, but as an overview, I think that gives us give you an idea of where we think we're at, of what the reality is of avocado production in Zambia. I still believe there's a terrific opportunity. It's a growing market. It is so that we have the problem of being a landlocked country, and that the harbors are not close by, and to try and fly it out by way of air freight is just too expensive. I tried that too, so that does not work. You've got to get yourself your avocados to a ship in the end of the day. Thank you, Linda. Is there something else that I could give more attention to?
We've got a few questions for you, sir. So, starting from the beginning, we have a question from, oops, my computer just froze.
You'll just have to speak up a bit. I can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yeah.
All right. Okay, sorry. So we have a question from the chat. So the first question is from Bessa. She says, what have you seen as the most practical option when it comes to marketing for export, using agents or wholesalers or exporters of international markets?
Well, of course, it all depends on your volume. But what we're doing, we're using agents, who have the contacts in international markets. So in other words, agents that are mostly situated in South Africa because they've got the experience of marketing in Europe and elsewhere. So we thought, okay, we'll go to where the people are actually doing it, and we've made contacts with they also have agents in Zambia, where Chris Morris, because he is also part of our value chain, to be able to market our avocados overseas. But I must say, we also have to think about the market. The African market, if I can put it to you, there must definitely be a market in the DRC to be able to the north of us, to be able to market over there. The freight costs will be different. There's about, I think somebody said there's about 17 million people in the Katanga province of the DRC, which is a market for Zambia, I think. If I look at everything that else that goes there, I think avocados also has an opportunity to go there. So we will have to look at it all. But to answer the question shortly, I think especially for us beginners, we use in the domestic market, we can use the wholesalers in Zambia, and in South Africa too, of course, wholesalers. If we get the permission to market in South Africa. And then agents for marketing, who has the experience for marketing in the overseas markets. Does that answer the question? Linda, have I lost you? You've disappeared.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you,
Hello?
but you did it come through?
Oh, thank you. Technology today is not my forte. Sorry. Okay, so another one, Vesa says, you mentioned precision farming quite a few times. Does BUTTERMERE farm have is BUTTERMERE farm very mechanized?
No, we're not very mechanized. At the moment, we're taking the route of employing Zambian people as many as we can. We job creators too. I think there is a responsibility in that towards that too. You can, for instance, mechanize the pruning of avocado trees. You can buy equipment to do it. or else you can have a management system where you use people to do the pruning. In other words, you can, by way of speaking, you can form partnerships with your workers to be able to say, okay, I'm farming this piece of these 4 hectares with whoever, and we've got a computerized system where we've got a profitability shareholding or profitability share for that specifically, so that trading and everything can happen per individual. So we must get to a stage, which I believe, where we treat people as individuals, we measure people as individuals, and we remunerate people as individuals, so that they can also make a good living out of it. So if somebody is very good at something, you've got to have an individual measuring system as well as a group measuring system to be able to say that you've got a specific person that's absolutely excels at the job. If you only work in groups, you will not know who that is. So I'm a great believer that you have to be, in Africa specifically, we've got to be people-centered. People, we must look at the people side of it, and development and training is something that is a high priority for us all. And I think you will agree with me. I think it creates opportunities for Zambians.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Mokava is asking, on a well-managed hectare of avocado, what is the profit yield per year?
Well, you can imagine if your break even is at 9 tons, it has, as an example, the top producers of Hass, I read the other day, just as a desktop size, is getting to 25 tons. The top 10%, the top 20% of farmers who farm Hass avocados are on an average of 18 tons.
Wow.
So you can imagine if your break even is at 9 tons or 45,000 kwacha, you break even. If you get another 9 tons, you've got 45,000 kwacha of profit.
Nice. Okay. Big. Yes. Thank you.
So the whole issue of how, it's all how good a producer you are, And you've got all these variables, as I mentioned, from pest control and fertilizers and irrigation and all these things, and disease controls and all these things, freight and everything. So you've got all these costings that you've got to keep a sharp pencil to, so that your average production to break even is where you can actually then make a profit. So I really believe that we're onto something,
Thank you.
It's going to be a steep learning curve, but we're onto something.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, there's another question here regarding your most recent export. What kind of feedback did you have from your buyers after they received your product? And what would you do differently?
Well, we sent our products to the Netherlands last year, and they were very impressed with it. We didn't have much, we made a few mistakes. Some of our product was a bit late. We started our harvesting a bit late. We made, in other words, mistakes on our side as far as the moisture content of the avos were and so on, because we don't have the experience. So we got a bit of a hiding on the second load of our avocados last year, But if we look at what's happening this year, we were absolutely 100% in time with our pest control and our spraying and all those things. We did a crop estimate beginning of this week, to see what we are. As far as the avocado oil is concerned, my youngest son is in the marketing business. He's in the US. He's busy with, getting our avocado label and our brand to the markets in the US and in Canada, so that we hope to bottle about 120,000 bottles of oil this year of 250 milliliters of avocado oil. Those are all the avocados last year. We couldn't market them because they were not good enough for the market, the export market, and the Zambian market was very limited. So So no, we got a bit of a hiding on the second road, and all in all, we didn't completely get to break even in our costs. We lost a bit of money last year. We hope on this year to get closer to where we are. We think by next year we will be in a profitable position, because by then we will have enough of our avocado trees becoming more mature, and in other words, their production will go up sharply. And hopefully we are clever enough to do a good job of it.
Well, having done that, having sort of turned to oil the ones that you were not able to export, when you did the calculations, did you still break even, or did you feel like if you had a better crop of avocados to export would have been better than the oil?
Yeah, I think the fresh market is better than the oil. I really think so, you know.
Oh, brilliant.
But at least you can do something with avocados that you can't export, because you're always going to have them. If you're really a good farmer, you're going to have 20-25% avocados that you can't export, you know, of the
Absolutely.
production. Now, if you look at it, that's quite a lot of avocados, you know. So for this year, this coming year, or this year that we starting harvesting one of these days, as a matter of fact, in the middle of February, I think we will be very busy harvesting already. We estimate we'll need about 300 tons of avocados for the contracts we've already made for the oil, because you've got to introduce this new brand into the market. So Leon, my youngest son, went into the business of contacting all the people who actually, you know, the chain stores, or how do we call department stores, that sell groceries and everything else, to get the avocado oil on the shelf, you know, to get it so the public can see it.
Yes.
Then we will see how the pricing goes. The estimates, you know, and all the budgets and everything we've done show that if we get the 120,000 bottles bottled, at least the shelf life is much better than the avocado itself. You know, you can keep it if you've made it correctly. We hope to this year not necessarily making a profit out of the oil, but we're going to introduce the product to the market and the brand to the market as a Zambian market, you know. And we're also looking into the organic side of organic farming for avocados. Because in Germany, for instance, you can get 4 times the normal price if you're an organic farm. You know, in other words, if you don't use all chemicals and pesticides and so on. So at the moment, Leon is looking into that to say, you know, what are those benchmarks, or what are those rules to be able to be classified as an organic market, organic farmer for the German market. But as you know, there are so many variables and so many different markets and niche markets and so on, that we are still kids in the game, but we're learning fast. We're learning fast.
Thank you. Oh, wow. Thank you so much. So the next question is coming from, let me have a look at the Bessa. Do you foresee a situation where Zambian exports become unattractive because of freight costs, given that we're a landlocked country?
I think our costing is going to, let's look at it for, if we could market, say for instance, you're going to market in the Middle East, you're not going to send it to Cape Town to get to the Middle East, you're going to send it to to Dar es Salaam. You want to market in the Middle East. If you're going to market it in Canada, for argument's sake, you're going to send those avocados most probably to Cape Town to get them there, you know. But, you know, our freight costs may be more expensive. And I think our fertilizer costs are also going to be more expensive. But we're more labor intensive, you know. And I think as far as that's concerned, we may be able to do a bit better over there. Our employment costs and everything that goes around that is going to be different, you know. So
yes,
it's a mixed bag. I've got a benchmarking process going at the moment, you know, and I'm studying what's happening in Australia and Peru and everywhere else. What are those costings look like compared to ours? Because you have to find some way to compare yourself. Let me just, there's a radio talking over here. Let me just get it to keep quiet. Okay, that's now going to keep quiet. All right. Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you so
Okay.
much.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. So I think our biggest from I think and everything else and a little bit more, we can compete favorably with anybody else that produces avocados. You know, the only thing where we're we negative at, or where we say is this our issue of freight. You know, because we're so far away from the sea. You know, to get these avos on a ship. But
Absolutely.
I don't think we must. I don't think market development to the north of Zambia. I think we can, looking from that point again. If you look at what will an avocado cost in the DRC at the moment, it's going to be far more expensive than it is in Zambia, because and that's not too far away. So we mustn't always just get stuck on what's happening in the developed world, as we want to call it that. You know, there are other markets too, and we are in a favorable position compared to anybody else on those markets. So it's market development is not a quick fix thing, but I think we can definitely look to the north of Zambia, you know, for markets, and even towards Namibia side of it. And there is also the possibility of using Walfish Bay as a harbor for certain other exports, although it's just about as far from Zambia as Cape Town. But the fact of the matter is there are more options than we may think if we dig into it a little bit.
Okay, thank you. I mean, Bessel is asking, is Buttermere Farm does Buttermere Farm intend to become an aggregator, engaging other Zambian farmers to augment their supply for the export markets?
Yeah, we're looking at it. We just want to make sure about the whole issue of what do they call it? You know, all the health issues. You know, all the issues of biological control of all pests and all kinds of things. But we're definitely looking into it to say that we will have to make a contribution towards the marketing of other people's product, whether we buy it or how we're going to go about it. In other words, to create a market for small farmers in Zambia to also be able to market their avocados. Otherwise, we're going to have a business where you concentrate the avocado production business in the few big farmers in the country, and that the small farmers don't get an opportunity. I don't think that is what we want. I think we want to create a situation where if people get into the business, even if they start off with 1 hectare or 2 hectares, you know, that they can learn, and the learning curve and the school fees that, some people are just good at it and others not, you know, so the opportunity must be there.
Thank you so much, sir. Another one up regarding your tonnage. What tonnage yield is Buttermere expecting this year?
We don't think we think a certain of our trees, you know, we've got trees that are 5 years old already. We think on those we will get there. We'll get to 9 tons and 10 tons, and the trees that are only 3 years old is going to be, you know, far less. So we've so far we've got, if I remember correctly now, we've got about 85 hectares of orchard done. We've got about, this year we will harvest on about 35 hectares of those. Most of our trees are still small and growing, you know, and it's all the capital intensive side of it, the irrigation and so on. But we see that it's going to expand tremendously in the next year or so as the trees grow older. So the production this year, I think we'll have trees that will have a hectare or a few hectares that will produce around about 12 tons. And we'll have a few that's going to be about 9. And then we've got quite a few hectares that are going to be under that. So if we come through this year with a break even, we'll be very happy. If we can break even this year with everything, we will feel very happy.
So I take it from the ones that you said were left behind and were not exported, that you have made changes to your farm to make sure that that doesn't happen, or was it unavoidable?
we're going to have we're always going to have product that can't be exported. That's why we're putting in a avocado oil factory, so we can make oil out of. We're going to make oil out of that, and then out of the pulp that comes out of that, we're going to make compost, so that we use everything we can,
Yes.
So that's the plan.
Thank you. Someone is asking to say, what is your take on ridging versus holes? I'm assuming they're talking about molds or
we do ridges, and some of our ridges are too high. That we found out afterwards. But we do ridges. There's a very good reason for ridges, because you don't want your avo to stand in you don't want to have avo with its feet in water, You've got to give it enough water, but it mustn't stand with its feet in the water, because phytophthora and all these other diseases, you want to limit those. So the modern way is to plant them on ridges, We've got a few hectares where we made the ridges too high, That is part of our school fees. I think to show you that, you'll have to come and look. But I would say the ridge is about 1 meter high, That's a bit too high. It should be more flattened, and so on, because now you've got water erosion on the side of the ridge because it's too steep. If you irrigate the water, or it rains or anything, the water runs down the side of the ridge, and then you can have extra cost to cover up the roots again, and so on and so on. So, we made a bit of a mistake on that one, but we corrected the rest of it. So it's something, how can I say, it's manageable. We've got a plan how we're going to fix it, and so on,
Thank you. Thank you for that question, Kelvin. That was from Kelvin Sikazwe. The next question is from Chilubi. Chilubi on YouTube is saying, have you covered value addition or processing avocados?
Yeah, well, the oil production is processing. That's typical processing. That's value addition. You buy. We've this year decided on, it's got to be a glass bottle. It's got to be a dark bottle, so that the oil inside can have shelf life, and so on. And at the moment, we've got a 250 milliliter bottle for the first run. Next year, we're going to look at the plastic bottles too. To get the bottle cost down. The bottles are expensive, and the bottle tops are expensive. Everything about the bottle is expensive. Yeah, it's expensive. That's expensive.
Is that local or international?
Yeah, you talk about cents here and there. You've got to save every cent you can save.
Absolutely.
But in any case, it's new for us. I believe we're the first avocado farmers that putting up a packing line as well as a factory at the same time, to be able to, because we don't have a choice. In South Africa, the guys can take their avos that are not suitable for export. They take it to another factory. They are factory. In Zambia, we don't have. We're the only one that's going to have. And that was not part of our plan in the beginning. In the beginning, we didn't think about it, as a matter of fact. But you're always going to have product that you can't sell in the international market.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And then someone who heard you talk the first time says, if I remember correctly, in the last presentation, it took BUTTERMERE Farm 10 years to achieve export success. In hindsight, what would you have done differently to have achieved that sooner?
I think in the beginning, when we started off, we were so unsure about, the capital we were putting in there and whether it's going to work or not, And the fact of the matter is, we do it without accumulating any debt. So we had to make a bit of money to be able to do it. In other words, we were a bit scared of gearing and so on, so we don't get ourselves in an insolvent position if we don't do this correct. And Absolutely. Then we also said, we rather start off slow and small, so that you can pay your school fees. If you make a mess of something, it's not a big mess. But in any case, we've decided now that if this is going to work, we're just going to keep on expanding it, because I like trees, and I think trees, avocado trees and all kinds of other different trees like macadamias. I see that in Zambia, a lot of macadamias are being planted at the moment, and farmers are going into that type of business for export and export markets and so on, So we'll earn some foreign exchange for Zambia. I think. And I think it's an exciting new venture for us to do. And the domestic market may be small, but the export market is something that we can exploit.
Thank you so much. And then we have 3 more questions here. Before I do the rest of the YouTube questions, I have 2 questions on the Zoom channel from Dr. Chimoga. Dr. Chimoga, do you want to please give your question out? Or do you want me to read it out? I'm happy to read it. It says, very encouraging presentation, sir. Record keeping is one big challenge, not only on the farm, but in the offices too. How do you just make sure all these general farm workers share your vision? I heard you said remunerate differently and also training. Is this really working out for you?
Well, what we've done, we've joined the Avocado Producers Organization in South Africa, because we don't have one, where we can go for training. Now, our plan is the following, this year, so far we've worked on a group basis, but this year, by next year, every worker on our farm is going to have, how can I say, ownership of trees. In other words, they're going to know that these few hundred trees or whatever, those are my trees. I look after them, and I'm going to be informed about the production and the costs and everything else. So it's an in-house training situation, for the economic side of it, because I believe in an open book system where you let people in and know what the production costs are, know what we're selling for, know when we make a profit, share in the profit, and know when we make a loss too, and why we make losses. Because if you really want to empower yourself and other people, you're not going to empower yourself if you don't take in consideration that the people who work in the orchard all day long, and you may be sitting in the office, sometimes know more about your trees than you do, because they're there every day.
Yes,
so the fact of the matter is that I think the management style, my management philosophy, I've been doing it for 50 years in South Africa. The fact is, I'm a great believer in training. I'm a great believer in in-house training as well as training outside. In other words, getting trainers in to do it. And I believe that every person that works in our business should have an opportunity to get training every year, so that we can accumulate knowledge, and therefore we can grow the business together.
Thank you. Now we've got a question from Mr. Piri. He's asking, how long did it take to reach 45,000 cultivation?
How long did it take to 45,000? You mean?
Mr. Piri, could you come off the speaker and ask your question, please? Even I don't understand it. You need to unmute yourself.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
If I heard you correctly, you said you had 35,000 trees. Now you've moved, is it 5,000 trees? You've now moved to 45,000. So how has been your journey?
How
long has been your journey?
I'll give you an idea now. You plant about 350 trees per hectare. Okay. So if you want 45,000 trees, you can calculate how many hectares you need for that. What I said was your break even is about 45,000 kwacha per hectare that you have to produce. So you've got to produce about 45,000 individual avocados of 200 grams to break even on 350 trees. That means you've got to produce about 128, if I remember correctly, 128 avocados per tree to get to a break-even situation. Does that answer your question?
Yes, partly, but also as BUTTERMERE, how long have you been in the avocado industry? How have you built up? How many hectares are you doing?
When I came to Zambia 11 years ago, part of my investment plan to the government of Zambia is that I want to come and farm in Zambia, and I want to farm avocados, and that is the plan, my investment plan, which they then accepted. That's the reason why we do avocados. I didn't want to. We also do, a bit of cash cropping of wheat and soybeans, but I just thought that, that needs to be something else, and it needs to export driven. And my desktop study showed me that there's a possibilities that avocados can be produced very, very economically in Zambia, and there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity for it. Specifically. Before that, I'm a cattle farmer, a cattle and cash crop, a rain-fed cash crop farmer, where I am in South Africa. My South African ventures are not in an irrigation situation. We're in the drier part of South Africa. So here we farm cattle and so on. But I believe that in Zambia there are other opportunities that can be exploited as a businessman. And also, I found Zambia very attractive, and that's why we made the investment.
Thank you so much for that. And then we have another question from Bessa. Is the Zambian market limited because of the avo imports from South Africa and elsewhere, as the retailers do seem to have imported avocados on the shelves?
Yeah, no, that is. We didn't have any avocado producers, or not many avocado producers in Zambia. So the avocados that the retailers on their shelves are mostly South African avocados. Now we've got to turn that around, so that we can have our own avocados on the shelves of Zambia as a Zambian product, and that we get the permission to actually export, in other words, compete with the South African producers in South African market. And as I said, I think there's a great opportunity for markets to the north of Zambia, and even to Angola and so on. If you can get there, if the roads and freight is to such an extent that you can get it there. But definitely if the DRC is a good market opportunity.
Thank you. Namundi Nayame is asking, I love to hear about you talking about organic farming on avocados.
Yeah, we just we're battling a bit to find the rules and regulations specifically towards organic farming, for the markets, and it's difficult because we've got so many things going at the same time. But I think there's an opportunity for organic farming. The rest of the markets in the world are looking more and more to more organic ways of production. And that the consumer is very aware of this. That it's something that if you're a farmer that you've got to look into. In other words, yes. Can it be cheaper? Will it be, the production will be different? Can you actually earn a premium in the market for avocados that are organically produced? And Leon, as I said, my youngest son who's in the marketing world, dug this out of that the marketing opportunities, especially in Germany for organic avocados, is very, very good.
Oh,
so
wow.
we just want to find the rules and regulations of what the German, and the laws and so on that prevail. When will they, under what circumstances will they deem a farm in Zambia as an organic farm?
Thank you. Before I ask the last two questions on WhatsApp from William Kapambwe and Roy, I've got a question of my own. In terms of your team, you mentioned you had your son doing some marketing, and then you mentioned giving ownership for some of the trees. What would you say is the perfect team for an avocado farm? So do you need somebody with skills of marketing? Do you need somebody who's got business sense? Or what is the best team for you that you found has worked for you?
Yeah, well, before I started farming avocados in Zambia, the only thing I knew about avocados was how to eat it, roughly, I bought them, I ate them, I didn't know anything about it. So it's been a steep learning curve, books and everything. In other words, studying the avocado business. I believe, you need, if you start off a business like this, you need to be in contact with people with different skill sets to be able to do this. If you're only a producer, you're not a good marketer, you're most probably going to get a hiding, and you're not going to get your products away from the market, because the consumer decides, the consumer decides, the people who buy the avocados decides how much money you're going to get, as well as the whole value chain in between. So you've got to have agents. You've got to have people that are skilled in the marketing game, because most of our farmers, myself included, we get very skilled at production, but we're not necessarily very skilled at marketing, to get the product on the shelf, to be able to exploit the market. We become very emotional sometimes that we, whether it's now wheat or whether it's now whatever, we get as a farmer, as a productive, the farmer gets X kwacha for his, and the consumer is paying 4 times more, and then you think, gee, well, somebody in this value chain is making a lot of money on the back of your business because you're actually producing these things. And it's necessary for us to get organized in Zambia too, to be able to know, what is fair in the marketing chain. When is it fair, and when are you being exploited? The thing is, it's very important, because if you don't have the right competition, people will exploit you. If you don't stick your nose into the business and to find out how it actually works. And if you get economics of scale, and you can start doing your own marketing, then you also need the employ the intellectual capital to come and help you do it. Because, they say we farmers are, you've got to be skilled in so many different aspects, but you can't be an expert at everything. You can have general knowledge of everything, but you will need some people who are really expert at marketing. I'm convinced of it, that can help you to see that you exploit the market in the right manner.
Okay, so after your first international export, which area or field did you need to get? Did you decide you needed more agronomists? Did you decide you needed someone who's organic farmer? So what kind of person did you have to add to your team?
Well, what we're looking at is firstly to employ a consultant.
Yes.
Walk through the orchard with us, with Leslie. He was on the farm every 3 months or so, and say, okay, this is what I see in your farm. In other words, an expert with outside knowledge. Okay.
Yes.
This is how you see this bug or that thing, or this is what you need over here, and help you with your production plan. Okay. So that you learn. All right, so that you can learn from somebody else. You're going to pay consultation fees, of course. It doesn't come for nothing, but it's the only way. That's a form of training, and it's a form of empowerment. So we think we're going to definitely do that, okay, on the production side. On the marketing side, we have partnered with people, not as in the business sense, but we've got now people in South Africa and in Zambia, in the value chain. And then Leon is looking specifically at the marketing of the oil. His focus point is now the marketing of the avocado oil, which we have to market every year. And that's why it doesn't matter where he is at. He can live anywhere in the world as far as that's concerned, because he's got to get the oil on the retailer shelf, In other words, the context for that. Now, he's going to come to Zambia when we start in March. When we start, our harvesters will be in full swing. He will be there, because our first bottles of olive oil have to be tested, We're tested whether it's pure enough, tested whether it doesn't have any contaminants in it, tested for all kinds of things that the market requires before you can actually sell it. There's Global Gap, and there's Smita, and there's HACCP, and there's all these things of quality controls, as well as how the farm is constructed, and how they don't want, say for instance, you start using child labor or something like that, which is what we won't do. You're not going to sell the products, but nobody trusts nobody nowadays. They will come and see. They'll come and walk through the orchards. They'll come and see who works there. They'll come and see want to know, what does the remuneration looks like, and what does the training plan look like, and how you do all these things before you can access a market, because people are very sensitive about this, and it should be that way too.
Absolutely.
Should be that
So,
way.
would the person inspecting be the agent or the actual?
It will be independent person,
Okay.
because if you independent person, that's technically very clever at it.
Okay. And what is the role of the agent? I mean, are they just there to sort of be an in-between in terms of processing paperwork and finding a buyer? Because then you've got your son who's marketing, who's finding the supplier.
Yeah, they're in the business for, marketers, agents and so on. They're in the value chain to deliver a service, and must get paid for it. So they're always looking for product, to sell, always looking for product and markets and all the time to do these things. And my son tells me there's a massive big difference between the word marketing and and selling. He says it's not the same thing. So sometimes, the young people tell you some things, you want to, sometimes you just don't understand what they're talking about, but they know what they, so the long and the short of it is that we know that if you want to establish a brand, we call our Avo brand, is called Avo and Eve. That's what it's going to be called. It's registered already, our brand. It's got a very specific label. So it's eye-catching, for people. The consumer who walks into the retail store will be able to see it immediately, the color scheme and all those things, all the marketing things that I know nothing about and he knows. That is part of it. I've been a producer my whole life, just about, now I'm learning about all kinds of other things. But in any case, we're looking at that so that we can establish on our boxes, export everything that is going to be product of Zambia, because I think that's important. It's got to be a product of Zambia. And then also on our olive oil, our avocado oil will also be like that, And we are obviously going to invite all these different market people to come and see what we do, and so on. So it's a big drive. It's a big drive to get these things done. But I'm an optimist by nature. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been a farmer. You have to be an optimist if you're a farmer. So I think we're going to have fun with it, and it's going to be something that we can be proud of when we're looking back in 10 years' time.
Okay, so I'll ask these questions very quickly, the last 3 questions. So William is asking, what is the general advice in getting it right in terms of the most opportune time for harvesting the avocados?
Well, what we do is we measure the moisture content of an avocado. Now, that's a bit of an interesting thing. You take an avocado off a tree, you take off the skin, you use your grater in the kitchen, you grate it onto a plate, you put it in the microwave, and you dry it. So you want the moisture content to be around about, when you start harvesting, around about 77%, and you will stop harvesting when it's 73%, because then it's going to dry out before it gets to the market. Excuse me. So that's a technical thing, And once you start harvesting, we estimate we'll have to employ lots of people, because we'll have to get this harvest done at the outside of 2.5 months. It must be done.
Okay.
The picking of those avos. So you can't pick avos with people. You've got to create jobs, and you've got to pick avos by hand. There's no other way of doing it.
Thank you. So Roy is asking, I love how you mentioned different avocado types planted will improve more profitability. Preferences exist. Can outgrowers break even or even make a profit if they have, let's say, 20 really good trees?
I will. Now I'm going to stick out my neck, I think I would rather say, I must be very careful now. I think it's an ideal. that there must be an opportunity for somebody who's got 20 avo trees. Okay, I think there must be opportunity for such people. Whether we're there yet, I don't know. But by next year, I'll be able to give you an answer to that.
Thank you. William is asking.
I can't answer it now. My gut feel says it should be that way, you know. Idealistically, it should be possible for somebody to start off with 20 avo trees or something, you know, and get something out of it, you know, and therefore decide whether they want to have more, you know. But we'll have to see how we're going to put this all together to create a market for such a person, you know. Or else they're going to pick it and they're going to pick the avos and stand next to the Great North Road and sell it there, you know, that type of thing.
I like that. Okay, so William is asking, do you undertake any artificial facilitation of pollination on the farm?
No, we haven't. We've started off with bees.
Nice.
You need pollinators. You need pollinators. We took some hives up there. We're looking for bees. You know, you need pollinators. You want production. You need bees. There's no question about it. You need bees.
Absolutely. Finally, a question. The last question is from Kelvin, and he says, how can an emerging avocado farmer identify good avocado tree seedlings? There are so many vendors in the industry. So he's asking how to identify one.
That's a fair question and a difficult one, you know. I think we're putting up a nursery. We're talking about, you know, marketing avocado trees. We've got a nursery because we do our own avocado trees, okay? So we've learned from the beginning, you know, you can either go and buy avocado trees, you know, in South Africa, then you're on a waiting list to get hold of them. Clone trees, all kinds of trees, okay? Or else you've got to buy them in Zambia. Now we believe that we must create a nursery for Zambians to buy trees from us, and then we can tell them precisely what the rootstock is, what kind of tree it is, what is to be expected, etc. So we're looking at that part of the business because we've got a nursery in any case. We have to have a nursery to get trees for ourselves. You know.
Oh,
so
thank you.
The same tree.
Yes, thank you. So that's all the questions we had, but I was just going to ask one very brief question. When you exported your avocados, how long did it take for them to go to reach the suppliers, and what route did you take? Did they go down to South Africa, or did you go up to Tanzania?
They went down. We transported them down to South Africa, to Johannesburg, and there they went into chillers there, and they stayed there for other avocados. And then from there they went to Cape Town on a ship, and they went to the Netherlands, you know. And if I remember correctly, Linda, the whole process took about 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
But you know, there's a cold chain. You keep the avos between 5 and 7 degrees centigrade. Cold. It's cold.
Oh, wow.
They must be kept cold, otherwise they're going to ripen. And they can't become hot and cold. They must be cold. That must be there. So then they just, you know, they're okay. And then what happens, and when they get to the markets on the other side, they get ripened. You know, that's why you see sometimes you go into a retail store, you see ready to eat, and then you see others, you've got to ripen them at home, and you put them in the cupboard, and you cover them with newspaper or whatever, just to see if you can get them right, you know. But that is roughly how it works. They get, in other words, they not edible when they go into the market, when they go down from Zambia to and the ship and everything, then they get ripened at the market. That's why it's so important to harvest it at the right time. It's very critical. It's very critical to harvest at the right time.
Thank you so much, sir. We appreciate your time and your coming out here to talk to all of us about your farm. At some point, I'm sure I will pester you regarding a tour on your farm towards the end of the year.
Okay.
I'm not too sure what is a good time for you, because if you're saying you're harvesting in March, did you say you're harvesting around March?
Yeah, I'm going to be in Zambia on the 18th of February. Then I must probably stay for quite a long time, because that will be in the harvesting season. And I also have to learn how all these things work, you know, so that we can make sure that the the production, we all new at it, and it's going to be a hectic production season. You know, new machinery, everything new, training. You know, people come from overseas to train us on that factory side of making avocado oil. So we'll have to identify people on the farm for training, and so on and so on. You know, so it's going to be very busy. But I'm looking forward to it, and maybe we can meet.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We'll keep in touch. But thank you so much, sir, again, and we appreciate your
My
time.
pleasure.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.